The cruelest kind of goodbye is the one that happens while you're still waiting for someone to show up. The golden lights of Maison Elise shimmered against the rain-streaked windows overlooking Manhattan, soft jazz floating through the crowded rooftop restaurant, while couples laughed over candlelit dinners and half-finished glasses of wine. Sophia Bennett sat alone at table 14, her fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of cold coffee she had stopped drinking nearly an hour ago. Outside, February rain slid down the glass in silver streaks, blurring the city into a sea of white headlights and glowing towers. She checked her phone again. 8:47 p.m. Her reservation had been at 7. Her stomach twisted harder each time the front elevator opened, and another couple stepped out smiling, dressed in expensive coats and polished shoes that clicked softly against the marble floor. Sophia forced herself to sit up straighter. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe Daniel's phone had died. Maybe there was still some explanation that would stop tonight from becoming exactly what she feared it already was. Around her wrist rested the thin silver bracelet he had given her 2 years ago, cheap enough that the color had begun fading near the clasp, but she had worn it every day anyway, because she believed promises mattered more than price tags. The waiter approached carefully, offering a sympathetic smile that only made the humiliation sting worse. "Would you like to order anything else, ma'am?" Sophia swallowed quickly. "No, thank you. I'm still waiting for someone." The waiter nodded politely, but she caught the glance he exchanged with another server near the bar. Pity. That quiet kind of pity people reserve for women sitting alone in fancy restaurants pretending they weren't being abandoned in real time. Her cheeks burned. She reached for her phone again just as the screen suddenly lit up. Relief rushed through her chest so fast it almost hurt. But the moment she opened the notification, her entire body froze. It was an Instagram story. Daniel stood beneath a glowing arch of white roses inside some luxury ballroom downtown, wearing the same navy suit he had told her he was saving for their anniversary dinner. Beside him stood a tall blonde woman in a diamond dress, her hands covering her mouth in fake surprise while tears streamed down her face. The caption read, "She said yes." Sophia stared at the screen as sound slowly disappeared around her. The music faded. The conversations blurred into static. Her heartbeat became the only thing she could hear. 2 years. She had skipped college classes to help him build presentations for investors. She had spent nights designing logos for his startup while eating dollar store ramen because they were building a future together. She had paid half his rent during the months nobody believed in him. And now he was proposing to another woman while she sat alone waiting for him like an idiot under restaurant lights bright enough for everyone to watch her fall apart. Her vision blurred instantly. She looked down, trying desperately to wipe the tears before anyone noticed. But one escaped anyway, sliding onto the white tablecloth beside the untouched dessert plate she had ordered for the two of them. Then a calm male voice spoke from nearby. "If a man can humiliate you this easily," the stranger said quietly, "he never deserved you in the first place." Sophia looked up through trembling lashes and saw a man standing beside her table, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal overcoat still damp from the rain outside. His jaw was sharp, his dark hair slightly windswept, and his steady blue eyes held none of the awkward curiosity she saw in everyone else around her. There was no pity there. Somehow, that almost made her cry harder. For a few seconds, Sophia could not even answer him. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too bright, too full of strangers pretending not to stare. She quickly turned her phone face down against the tablecloth, embarrassed that this man had just witnessed the worst moment of her life. "I am sorry," she whispered, brushing tears from her cheeks with trembling fingers. "You probably did not sign up for front row seats to someone else's disaster tonight." The man pulled out the empty chair across from her, but did not sit immediately. "May I?" he asked calmly. Sophia hesitated before giving a small nod. He removed his overcoat carefully, revealing a dark charcoal sweater beneath it. Simple, but expensive enough that she instantly knew it probably cost more than her monthly rent. Still, there was nothing flashy about him. No arrogance. No smug smile. Just a quiet steadiness that somehow made the noise of the restaurant fade around her. The waiter appeared again, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, would you like a menu?" "2 slices of cheesecake," the stranger said smoothly. "And a fresh coffee for her. Black." Sophia blinked. "I did not ask for that." "I know," he replied softly. You also did not ask to get your heart broken in public tonight. Despite herself, a tiny laugh escaped her throat, shaky and exhausted. It surprised both of them. The stranger leaned back slightly, watching her with calm blue eyes. There, he said. That already sounds better than crying. Sophia shook her head in disbelief. You make it sound very simple. It is not simple, he admitted. But humiliation feels bigger when you believe it says something about your worth. She stared at him quietly. Nobody had ever said something like that to her before. Most people either offered shallow sympathy or immediately tried to turn pain into advice. But this man spoke as if he understood exactly how public rejection could hollow someone out from the inside. The cheesecake arrived moments later, the soft scent of vanilla and caramel filling the small space between them. Sophia looked down at the plate and almost laughed again. Cheesecake. Bad nights deserve sugar, he said simply. Another silence settled between them, softer this time. Outside the windows, rain washed silver across the Manhattan skyline, while headlights moved like rivers 30 floors below. Finally, Sophia spoke again, her voice quieter now. 2 years, she murmured. I gave that man 2 years of my life. The stranger listened without interrupting. Maybe that was why she kept talking. I helped him build his company from nothing. I designed presentations, logos, marketing decks. I stayed awake until 3 in the morning helping him prepare for investor meetings while he kept promising we're building a future together. Her throat tightened again. I thought struggling together meant something. The stranger rested his hands loosely against the table. What is your name? Sophia. Sophia, he repeated carefully, as if testing how it sounded. A good man does not trade loyalty for convenience. She looked down at the fading silver bracelet around her wrist. Suddenly it felt childish. Cheap. Embarrassing. I think I knew for a while, she admitted quietly. I just kept hoping if I loved him enough, eventually he would choose me. The stranger's expression shifted then, something unreadable passing briefly through his eyes before disappearing again. People who are starving for love, he said softly, usually accept far less than they deserve. Sophia swallowed hard. The words landed deeper than she expected. For the first time all night, she felt something besides humiliation. Not happiness exactly, but relief. Relief that someone had looked at her worst moment and still spoken to her gently. The stranger reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a simple cream-colored business card, placing it carefully beside her coffee cup. There was only a name embossed across the front. Adrian Cole. No title, no company, no explanation. Then beneath it, written in dark ink by hand, were 6 words. Do not let him define your value. By the time Sophia finally stepped out of Maison Elise, the rain had slowed into a cold mist drifting between the skyscrapers of Midtown Manhattan. The city glowed silver and gold around her, taxis splashing through wet streets while steam curled from subway grates into the February air. She pulled her coat tighter around herself and stared down at the cream-colored business card still resting in her hand. Adrian Cole. Just a name. No title. No company logo. No phone number except a single private line embossed neatly beneath the handwriting that had somehow stayed in her mind all evening. Do not let him define your value. She should have thrown the card away. Men like him did not exist in real life. Calm strangers with expensive coats and kind eyes who appeared out of nowhere to rescue women from humiliating nights in overpriced restaurants. But instead, she slipped the card carefully into her purse beside the fading silver bracelet she suddenly could not bring herself to wear anymore. The subway ride back to Brooklyn felt endless. Across from her, a young couple leaned against each other laughing quietly, while Sophia stared at her reflection in the dark train window. Her mascara had smudged beneath her eyes. Her hair had lost the careful curls she spent 40 minutes styling before dinner. She looked tired. Not just tonight. Tired in a deeper way. The kind of tired that came from spending years trying to prove you were enough for someone who had already decided you were temporary. Her apartment greeted her with silence when she finally unlocked the door shortly after midnight. A tiny 5th-floor walk-up barely large enough for a couch, a narrow kitchen, and a bed pushed against exposed brick walls. The radiator hissed unevenly while traffic noise drifted faintly through the old windows facing the alley. Sophia dropped her heels near the door and sank onto the edge of the bed without turning on the lights. For a long moment, she simply sat there staring into the darkness. Then her phone buzzed again. Her chest tightened instantly. Daniel. She almost ignored it. Almost. But some weak, hopeful part of her still wanted an explanation that would make tonight hurt less. Her fingers trembled as she opened the message. I was going to tell you eventually. This is better for both of us. Vanessa understands the lifestyle I want now. Please do not make this messy. Sophia stared at the words until her vision blurred again. Lifestyle. As if love had become some luxury product, he upgraded once success finally arrived. Slowly, she reached up and unclasped the silver bracelet from her wrist. The tiny metal hook caught briefly against her skin before falling free into her palm. She remembered the night he gave it to her outside a 24-hour diner in Queens when they were both broke and dreaming out loud about the future. One day, he had promised back then, I am going to make your life beautiful. A shaky breath escaped her lips. You already did, she whispered bitterly into the empty apartment. You just forgot to stay. She dropped the bracelet onto the nightstand and curled beneath the blankets fully dressed, hoping sleep would erase at least part of the ache in her chest. But morning arrived too quickly. Gray winter lights spilled through the windows while her alarm buzzed beside her bed at 7:30 sharp. Sophia groaned softly and forced herself upright. Reality hit again instantly. Rent was due in 4 days. 2 freelance clients still had not paid her invoices. And at 11 o'clock, she had a final interview with a Manhattan branding agency she desperately needed if she wanted to survive the next few months. She shuffled toward the kitchen to make coffee when her eyes landed on the cream-colored card resting beside her keys. Adrian Cole. Something about the memory of his steady voice grounded her unexpectedly. Tonight is not the end of your story. Sophia exhaled slowly, then slipped the card into her coat pocket before heading out into the freezing New York morning, unaware that by lunchtime, she was about to see that name again in a way that would change everything. Sophia nearly missed the interview entirely because the downtown train stalled beneath the East River for 23 painful minutes, while frustrated commuters groaned around her. By the time she reached Midtown Manhattan, icy wind whipped between the skyscrapers hard enough to sting her cheeks, and her boots splashed through dirty snow melting along the sidewalks. She hurried across Lexington Avenue, clutching her portfolio against her chest, trying not to panic every time she checked the time on her phone. 11:27. 27 minutes late. Perfect. The glass tower of Ashford Creative rose above the street like polished steel and winter light, its revolving doors spinning endlessly as sharply dressed employees crossed the marble lobby carrying coffees and designer briefcases. Sophia paused outside for 1 second, staring at her reflection in the glass. Her coat was still damp from the weather. Loose strands of hair framed her tired face. She looked nothing like the confident Manhattan creatives who probably walked into this building every day. For a dangerous moment, she almost turned around. But then her fingers brushed against the cream-colored business card still hidden in her pocket. Do not let him define your value. She inhaled slowly and stepped inside. The lobby smelled faintly of espresso and expensive perfume. High above, crystal lights glowed against black marble walls while a massive digital screen displayed rotating campaigns from luxury brands Ashford represented. Sophia approached the reception desk nervously. Hi, I am here for the 11 o'clock branding interview with Ms. Davenport. Sophia Bennett. The receptionist typed quickly before glancing up. They are still upstairs. 34th floor. Conference room C. Sophia blinked in surprise. They are still willing to see me? Apparently. The elevator ride felt endless. Her pulse hammered harder with each floor. 34 stories above Manhattan, the conference level looked less like an office and more like a luxury hotel, with dark wood walls, soft lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Through the glass conference room doors, she spotted 3 executives seated around a long table reviewing portfolios. Sophia straightened her shoulders and stepped inside carefully. Sorry I am late, she said quickly. The subway stalled, and her words stopped instantly. Because seated at the far end of the table was Adrian Cole. For one impossible second, neither of them moved. Sophia felt her breath disappear completely. He looked different in daylight. Sharper somehow. More controlled. The soft stranger from the restaurant had been replaced by a man whose quiet presence seemed to command the entire room without effort. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit now, his silver watch catching the morning light as he closed a file in front of him. Yet his eyes remained exactly the same. Calm, steady, familiar. One of the executives smiled awkwardly. Miss Bennett, thank you for joining us. We were just discussing your campaign concepts. Sophia barely heard him. Her gaze remained fixed on Adrian, while confusion rushed through her chest. You, she whispered before stopping herself. Adrian's expression softened almost invisibly. Good morning, Sophia. The woman beside him looked between them curiously. You two know each other? Sophia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Adrian answered smoothly instead. We met briefly last night. Last night. As if sitting across from someone while your heart shattered counted as a brief meeting. Sophia tightened her grip on her portfolio, trying desperately to regain composure. Then the massive screen behind Adrian suddenly shifted to the company presentation slide. And for the first time, Sophia saw the full name displayed across the wall in giant silver letters. Adrian Cole, founder and chief executive officer of Cole Global Capital. Her stomach dropped instantly. The air seemed to leave the room all over again. Billionaire investor. International real estate empire. One of the youngest CEOs in New York. She knew the name now. Everyone did. And suddenly, every quiet detail from the night before made horrifying sense. The tailored coat. The private line. The effortless confidence. Sophia stared at him in complete disbelief, while Adrian simply held her gaze calmly from across the table, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment all along. Sophia spent the first 10 minutes of the interview trying not to completely forget how to breathe. Every time she looked across the conference table, she saw not the billionaire whose face occasionally appeared on magazine covers and grocery store checkout lines, but the quiet stranger who had ordered her cheesecake while she cried over another man. Somehow that made the situation even more overwhelming. The executives beside Adrian flipped through printed samples from her portfolio, while Manhattan shimmered through the windows behind them in cold winter sunlight. Your branding work feels emotional, one woman said thoughtfully as she studied Sophia's campaign mock-ups. Most applicants focus on trends. You focus on people. Sophia swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay professional. I think people remember how something makes them feel before they remember the product itself. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair, his eyes never fully leaving her. That is rare in this industry, he said. Calmly. Most companies sell aspiration. Very few know how to sell connection. Hearing him defend her ideas so naturally sent warmth rushing unexpectedly through Sophia's chest. She quickly looked down at her notes before he could notice. The interview continued for another half hour, but it felt strangely different from every other one she had endured over the past year. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody spoke to her like she was inexperienced just because she lacked a polished Manhattan resume. They actually listened. And every time her nerves threatened to unravel, Adrian's calm presence somehow steadied the room again. By the end of the meeting, the silver-haired executive across from her smiled warmly. Thank you for coming in, Miss Bennett. We will contact you soon. Sophia gathered her portfolio quickly, eager to escape before her emotions completely caught up with her. Thank you for your time. She nearly made it to the conference room door before Adrian's voice stopped her gently. Sophia. One moment. Her pulse jumped instantly. The other executives exchanged knowing glances before quietly filing out into the hallway, leaving the two of them alone inside the glass conference room overlooking Manhattan. Silence settled softly between them. Sophia turned slowly. You could have warned me, she said finally, attempting a nervous smile. Adrian's expression softened faintly. Would you have come today if I had? She opened her mouth, then stopped. No, probably not. Adrian stood and walked toward the windows, slipping one hand into his pocket while snow clouds drifted above the city skyline behind him. You looked like you wanted to run the moment you saw my name. Can you blame me? Sophia laughed quietly, though the sound carried embarrassment beneath it. Last night, I thought you were just some nice guy who happened to sit near me in a restaurant. Adrian turned toward her fully then. And today? Sophia hesitated. Billionaire. CEO. Investor. Men like him belong to another universe entirely. A world of private jets and penthouses and people who never worried about overdue rent notices taped to apartment doors. She looked down at the worn edge of her portfolio folder. Today I feel a little stupid for crying in front of you. Adrian's gaze sharpened immediately. Do not. The firmness in his voice surprised her. He stepped closer slowly, not enough to invade her space, just enough that she could see the sincerity in his expression clearly now. You had every right to be hurt. Sophia looked away before he could notice how deeply those words affected her. Most people would have pretended not to see me. Most people are uncomfortable around honesty, Adrian replied quietly. Pain makes them nervous because it reminds them they are not as untouchable as they pretend to be. Sophia let out a soft breath, unsure why talking to him felt so strangely easy. Dangerous, almost. Like he saw parts of her she usually kept hidden beneath polite smiles and late invoices and carefully controlled conversations. Adrian glanced toward the portfolio tucked against her chest. Your campaign concepts impressed the board. Sophia blinked. Really? Really? Then, for the first time since she entered the building, the corner of his mouth lifted into an actual smile. Small, controlled, but real, especially the one about rebuilding identity after public failure. Heat rushed instantly to Sophia's cheeks because she suddenly realized exactly which campaign he meant. The one she created after spending 2 years helping Daniel rise while quietly disappearing herself. Adrian studied her for another second before speaking again, softer this time. You understand something most successful people forget, Sophia. What is that? His blue eyes held her steadily. Sometimes the people who are falling apart are actually the ones closest to becoming who they were meant to be. 3 days later, Sophia was standing in the middle of her tiny apartment wearing pajama pants and an oversized sweater when her phone rang at exactly 8:15 in the morning. She nearly ignored it, assuming it was another overdue payment reminder or spam call, but the unfamiliar Manhattan number made her hesitate. Hello. Good morning, Miss Bennett. The polished female voice on the other end sounded warm and professional. This is Evelyn from Ashford. Creative. I am calling to formally offer you the senior branding consultant position. Sophia froze completely. Outside her window, a garbage truck rattled down the narrow Brooklyn street, while cold February sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor. I am sorry, she whispered. Could you repeat that? Evelyn laughed softly. You got the job. For one impossible second, Sophia could not speak at all. Her eyes drifted toward the stack of unpaid bills sitting beside her coffee maker. Rent notice. Electricity warning. Student loan statement. The entire fragile structure of her life suddenly seemed to loosen around her chest just enough for her to breathe again. Yes, she said quickly, emotion catching in her throat. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. After the call ended, Sophia stood silently in the middle of her apartment, staring at nothing. Then, before she could stop herself, she began to cry again. But this time it felt different. Not humiliation. Relief. The kind that arrived quietly after weeks of believing life was determined to keep breaking you apart. Her first day at Ashford Creative arrived the following Monday wrapped in gray skies and freezing wind sharp enough to cut through wool coats. Sophia stepped into the Manhattan office carrying a new notebook she had bought from a discount store in Queens because she wanted at least one thing in her life to feel fresh again. The office buzzed with polished energy. Assistants moved quickly between glass conference rooms while giant digital campaign boards glowed along the walls displaying luxury fashion brands, tech startups, and political media clients. Everything felt intimidatingly expensive. Sophia spent most of the morning trying not to look overwhelmed while human resources walked her through orientation paperwork. But by lunchtime, reality returned in the form of Lauren Whitmore. So you are the new favorite, Lauren said lightly while stirring almond milk into her coffee inside the executive kitchen. Sophia looked up from the espresso machine. Lauren was stunning in the polished Manhattan way magazines loved. Blonde hair, perfect makeup, a white designer coat draped effortlessly across one shoulder. I am sorry, Sophia asked carefully. Lauren smiled without warmth. You interviewed directly with Adrian Cole. That does not happen often. The way she said his name instantly tightened something in Sophia's chest. I was not aware there was favoritism involved. Oh, there always is, Lauren replied smoothly. This industry just hides it better than Hollywood. Before Sophia could answer, movement near the kitchen entrance caught everyone's attention. The entire room subtly shifted the moment Adrian walked in. Conversations softened. Employees straightened instinctively. Yet Adrian himself looked completely unaffected by the attention surrounding him. His dark overcoat rested across one arm, while snowflakes still melted faintly against his shoulders from outside. Then his eyes found Sophia standing beside the coffee machine, and something in his expression changed instantly. Softer, warmer, more human than the version everyone else around him seemed terrified of. "Good morning, Sophia." Hearing her name in his voice somehow felt dangerously personal inside a room full of strangers. "Good morning," she answered quietly. Lauren glanced between them carefully. Adrian approached the counter and poured himself coffee without breaking eye contact with Sophia entirely. "How is your first day going?" "I have only gotten lost twice," she admitted nervously. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth again. "Then you are already outperforming most people here." A few employees nearby laughed politely. But Sophia noticed something else. Adrian never once spoke down to her. Never treated her like she was beneath him despite the billions attached to his last name. If anything, he seemed more relaxed around her than anyone else in the building. Lauren clearly noticed it too. The woman's smile tightened slightly as she picked up her coffee cup. "Well," she said lightly, "some people really do get lucky overnight." Sophia felt the sting hidden beneath the words immediately. But before insecurity could rise again, Adrian spoke calmly from beside her. "Luck has very little to do with talent." The kitchen fell silent for half a second. Lauren's expression flickered. Sophia looked at Adrian in surprise while he simply took a sip of coffee like he had not just defended her in front of half the executive floor. And for the first time in months, Sophia felt something unfamiliar beginning to return slowly inside her chest. Confidence. Over the next several weeks, Sophia slowly began building a version of herself she barely recognized anymore. Her mornings no longer started with anxiety twisting through her chest before sunrise. Instead, they began with subway rides into Manhattan while winter slowly softened into early March. The city streets crowded with people carrying coffees and shedding heavy coats beneath pale sunlight. At Ashford Creative, her campaign ideas quickly gained attention across multiple departments. Clients responded to her work in ways even senior executives had not expected. One luxury skincare company called her rebranding concept the first campaign in years that actually felt human. Another client requested Sophia personally for future projects after a single presentation. For the first time in years, people were seeing her talent before seeing what she lacked. And somehow, Adrian remained quietly present through all of it. Never overwhelming, never crossing boundaries. Just there. Sometimes she would find handwritten notes left beside presentation drafts after late meetings. "Trust your instincts on page 4. Or, the emotional angle is your strongest advantage. Do not dilute it." Other times he simply appeared unexpectedly beside her desk after difficult client calls. "You handled that well," he would say calmly before disappearing into another executive meeting. Those tiny moments began affecting Sophia more than she wanted to admit. One rainy Thursday evening, nearly everyone had already left the office when the power briefly flickered during a storm rolling across Manhattan. Sophia sat alone in a conference room surrounded by campaign boards and empty coffee cups, rubbing tired eyes while trying to finish revisions before morning. Outside the windows, lightning flashed faintly across the skyline. "You are still here?" Adrian's voice broke the silence gently from the doorway. Sophia looked up to find him loosening his tie slightly, exhaustion softening the sharp edges of his usual composure. "Deadline tomorrow," she said with a tired smile. Adrian stepped inside, glancing over the design layouts spread across the table. "You redesigned the entire campaign?" The original concept felt cold. Sophia shrugged lightly. People do not connect with perfection anymore. They connect with honesty. Adrian studied the boards quietly for several seconds before looking back at her. "That is exactly why your work succeeds." The room fell silent again except for rain tapping softly against the glass walls. Sophia looked down at her coffee cup nervously. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why were you at that restaurant that night?" Adrian leaned lightly against the edge of the conference table, his expression unreadable for a moment. "I had just finished a 12-hour negotiation with people who only cared about numbers," he admitted quietly. "Then I saw someone crying alone while trying very hard not to embarrass herself in public." Sophia laughed softly under her breath. "I was definitely embarrassing myself." "No," Adrian said immediately. "You were hurt." The way he said it made her chest tighten unexpectedly again. He always did that somehow. Took emotions she tried to minimize and treated them gently instead. Sophia looked away toward the storm outside. Most people think successful men like confidence and perfection. Adrian's eyes remained on her. Most successful men are deeply lonely. She turned back slowly. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. Billionaires were not supposed to sound lonely. They were supposed to sound untouchable. Adrian glanced toward the dark skyline. People see power and assume your life becomes easier. He continued quietly. What actually happens is you stop knowing who sees you and who sees what you can give them. Sophia's heart softened painfully then because for the first time, she realized Adrian carried his own kind of isolation too. Different from hers, but real. The storm outside deepened while warm office lights reflected softly across the glass walls around them. Sophia smiled faintly. That sounds exhausting. Adrian looked back at her finally, and something gentler appeared in his expression than she had ever seen before. It was, he admitted softly. Until recently. The meaning behind those words hung carefully between them, quiet but impossible to ignore. And for one dangerous, beautiful moment, Sophia forgot entirely that another man had once convinced her she was difficult to love. By early April, Manhattan had finally begun shaking off the last traces of winter. Sidewalk cafes reopened beneath strings of lights, tulips appeared along Park Avenue, and warm evening air drifted through the city with the promise of spring. For Sophia, life no longer felt like something she was merely surviving. It felt like something she was finally stepping into. Her campaigns at Ashford Creative continued gaining attention, and for the first time in years, she no longer apologized for taking up space in a room. She spoke more confidently during presentations. She laughed more easily with coworkers. She even stopped checking Daniel's social media entirely, which somehow felt like the biggest victory of all. But just as things began feeling steady again, the past found its way back into her life exactly the way pain usually does. Unexpectedly, publicly, and at the worst possible moment. It happened on a Thursday afternoon during a launch event for one of Ashford's largest fashion clients. The rooftop venue overlooked the Hudson River, packed with influencers, executives, photographers, and journalists carrying champagne glasses beneath soft golden lights. Sophia stood near one of the presentation screens reviewing final details on her tablet when she suddenly heard a familiar voice behind her. Sophia? Every muscle in her body tightened instantly. She turned slowly and saw Daniel standing only a few feet away beside a tall blonde woman she recognized immediately from the engagement photos online. Vanessa. For one horrifying second, Sophia felt dragged backward in time again to that restaurant night. The humiliation. The betrayal. The feeling of not being enough. Daniel looked stunned. I did not know you worked here now. Sophia forced herself to stay calm. I do. His gaze moved slowly across the elegant rooftop setup, the executives greeting one another nearby, the massive Ashford branding displays surrounding them. Then his expression shifted into something unreadable. Regret maybe. You look different, he admitted quietly. Before Sophia could answer, Vanessa crossed her arms lightly. This is the girl you used to date. The dismissiveness in her tone landed instantly. Sophia felt her stomach tighten again. Daniel laughed awkwardly. Sophia helped with some early startup work before things really took off. Helped. The word hit harder than she expected. As if the years she spent sacrificing sleep, money, and opportunities for his company had been some small favor instead of the foundation beneath everything he built. Vanessa smiled politely at Sophia, but the pity in her eyes felt worse than cruelty. Well, she said smoothly, everything happens for a reason, right? Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. The old insecurity returned so fast, it almost stole her breath again. Then another voice entered calmly behind her. Actually, Adrian said, success usually happens because someone worked very hard for it. The entire atmosphere shifted instantly. Sophia turned to find Adrian approaching across the rooftop in a tailored black suit, evening lights reflecting softly against the Hudson behind him. Conversations nearby quieted almost automatically the moment people noticed him. Daniel's posture stiffened immediately. Vanessa's expression changed too, surprise flickering across her face as she recognized one of the most powerful investors in New York standing beside Sophia. Adrian stopped at her side naturally, close enough that his calm presence steadied the panic rising inside her chest again. Good evening, he said politely to the couple before turning his attention fully towards Sophia. The client loved your presentation. Sophia swallowed hard, trying not to show how relieved she suddenly felt. Daniel stared between them in disbelief. Wait, he said slowly. You know Adrian Cole? Adrian answered before Sophia could. I know talent when I see it. The silence that followed felt razor sharp. Vanessa blinked in confusion while Daniel's face slowly lost color. For the first time since he walked onto that rooftop, Sophia watched uncertainty appear in the man who once made her feel disposable. Adrian looked down at Sophia gently then, his voice quieter now, but somehow even more powerful because of it. You should not waste another second explaining your worth to people who benefited from doubting it. Sophia felt emotion rise unexpectedly in her throat. Because in that moment, standing beneath Manhattan lights with the river glowing behind them, she realized something life-changing all at once. The woman Daniel abandoned at that restaurant no longer existed anymore. Summer arrived in Manhattan wrapped in golden sunsets and warm rooftop air drifting between glass towers that glowed long after dark. Nearly 6 months had passed since the night Sophia Bennett sat crying alone in Maison Elise, believing her life had completely fallen apart. Looking back now, it felt almost impossible to recognize that version of herself anymore. Ashford Creative had promoted her twice in less than a year after her campaigns consistently outperformed expectations. Her branding concepts were being featured in major business magazines. Clients specifically requested her on projects. But the biggest change had nothing to do with career success. It was the quiet confidence that now lived inside her naturally, the kind no relationship could give and no heartbreak could destroy. On a warm Friday evening in July, Sophia stood inside a private art gallery in Soho adjusting the final details for a charity exhibition Ashford had sponsored alongside Cole Global Capital. Soft piano music drifted through the elegant space while guests in formal attire moved between photography displays and modern artwork beneath amber lighting. Through the open gallery windows, New York shimmered outside in gold and silver against the fading sunset. Sophia smiled softly to herself while reviewing the event program in her hands. Her life had once felt painfully small. Now it felt open, alive. You still check details when everything is already perfect. Adrian's familiar voice reached her gently from behind. Sophia turned and immediately felt her heart warm at the sight of him. He crossed the gallery floor in a dark tailored suit, sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists like he had escaped another impossibly long executive meeting just to make it here on time. But his eyes softened the moment they landed on her, exactly the way they always did now. Someone has to keep billionaires organized, she teased lightly. Adrian stopped beside her, close enough that she caught the clean scent of cedar and rain lingering from outside. I am beginning to think you enjoy intimidating me. Sophia laughed quietly. Impossible. You terrify entire boardrooms for a living. Only the dishonest ones. The music swelled softly around them while guests continued mingling nearby, but somehow the space between them still felt private. Familiar. Safe. Adrian glanced toward the small silver bracelet displayed inside a framed shadow box near the center exhibit. Sophia followed his gaze and smiled faintly. Months earlier, she had nearly thrown it away forever. Now it rested inside the gallery as part of a creative installation titled Becoming Again, surrounded by handwritten stories from women rebuilding their identities after heartbreak, loss, and public humiliation. I still cannot believe people connected with the project this much, Sophia admitted softly. Adrian looked at her carefully. You gave people honesty, he said. Most of the world is starving for that. Her chest tightened gently at the sincerity in his voice. Adrian had done that from the beginning, seen her clearly long before she knew how to see herself again. Across the room, photographers gathered as executives prepared for the evening speeches. Adrian glanced toward them briefly before looking back at Sophia with an expression suddenly quieter than before. More vulnerable somehow. There is something I have been meaning to ask you. Sophia felt her pulse quicken instantly. Adrian reached slowly into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out the same cream-colored business card he had given her months ago at Maison Elise. The edges were softer now from being carried so often. Beneath the handwritten sentence he had once left for her, another line had been added carefully in dark ink. You became everything he failed to see. Sophia's breath caught instantly. Adrian stepped closer, his blue eyes holding her steadily while the golden lights of Manhattan shimmered through the gallery windows behind him. That night, he said softly, "You thought your story was ending." His voice lowered gently. "But meeting you became the best thing that ever happened to me." Emotion rose fast inside her chest. Adrian took her hand carefully then, like something precious he never wanted to hurt. "Sophia Bennett," he said quietly, "would you let me spend the rest of my life reminding you how valuable you are?" Tears filled her eyes immediately, but this time they carried no humiliation at all. Only happiness. Only healing. Sophia laughed softly through the tears and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I would." And as the city lights glowed beyond the windows and applause slowly rose around them from the guests beginning to notice what was happening, Sophia realized something beautiful at last. Sometimes the worst night of your life becomes the doorway to the love that finally teaches you your worth.